let's just get into it. If you have attended the other sessions that I hosted over the past couple of months, this kind of follows like what we talked about a little bit. So when I send out the recording of this, I can make sure to include the links to the replays of those if you did not attend them. And then you can kind of see what we're going off of here. So I will just dive right into reviewing. I'm kind of going to get I guess more complicated as we go. So I'll start out with LinkedIn because that's like a pretty easy one. And let me just share my screen. So Kayla had submitted her LinkedIn profile. So you're able to see this now. Let me pull it up. Okay, so just to chat a little bit about the feedback that I had for Kayla's LinkedIn profile here, I honestly think that she has a pretty good profile like as it stands, but I do think that there's some things that she could do to improve. So this probably is relevant for anyone who is kind of like switching industries. So Kayla had mentioned she's mid industry expansion. So she didn't elaborate on that at all. So I didn't entirely know what industry she was expanding into. But as I kind of said in my feedback, I think that she's probably trying to focus more on voice AI and voiceover, as she is sort of a voiceover artist, and then she works in marketing for different like voice organizations. So she works in both Women in Voice and National Association of Voice Actors. So if you just kind of like right off the bat, if you attended my LinkedIn session, you would know that I paid a lot of attention to this tagline that is right here. And especially because she had mentioned that she is trying to expand into new industry. If I'm assuming that that's like conversational AI and voice technology, I would definitely want to see something like that mentioned in this tagline. Even if it is, she's aspiring, or she, is a visual designer and marketing manager for voice AI companies or something like that, just to kind of give context to the person who is seeing her profile show up in their feed or when they're searching. So that's definitely something that I would spend some time on, as well as her about section. So that is also kind of short. And I think that making this just more focused on the work experience that she does have within voice and AI, because she does have like quite a bit of experience through both Women in Voice and her experience with being a voice actor. I think that that would be something worth highlighting here. So as I mentioned, I was making a video getting reviews about like my portfolio and then also my LinkedIn as well. So I'm going to be sharing that video in the next couple of days, most likely, just to kind of say like, I am sure that most people are unaware of the fact that you can download a PDF of your LinkedIn and then use that content to sort of improve on it or cross-reference it with your profile and a job you might want to be applying for. And that's something that you can use something like ChatGPT up for. So generally, I would just have her kind of go through, this is what my goal is, and this is where my profile is, or this is based on my content where like ChatGPT says that my profile and expertise is, and see how it matches. But yeah, in general, I think she's kind of like highlighting the key sections of like having a featured section, but she doesn't have the link to her website in her featured section. So there's just things that you can spend more time on as you're going through, making sure that things are filled out entirely. Like for example, her current work experience, she doesn't have any examples of her work, and since she's working in content, she likely has content that she's generated for this job, so she definitely could include that here. And then another thing I wanted to call out that we did talk about in the previous workshop is the recommendation section, because she actually has very good recommendations that are very thorough, and they also are very current. So this is great. And all of this content, especially these are like multi-paragraph recommendations, which I feel like you don't really see a lot. She could use a lot of these quotes in her about section, or with, if she's worked with these people, she worked with Joan at Women in Voice, add that quote to your work experience so that people can see it, and so that it's highlighted a bit more. I think that's like an excellent thing to have. I wish that I had that many recommendations that were current. So if you don't have recommendations, you could even look at her profile and see these are the types of things that you might want to ask someone for. So yeah, so that I think is like, I guess, a very quick overview, I would say, of LinkedIn. Does anyone have any other questions about LinkedIn in general before we move on to talking about case studies?
Where do you
No?
download PDF version, Hillary, so you can put it into Perplexity or ChatGPT?
Yeah, let me find where I did that. I believe it's like on your profile. So yeah, it is. So if you go to your profile and then you click this more button, you can save it to a PDF. And then I'll show you what this PDF looks like. So it's just like almost like a resume kind of. It's like just a download of your, all of the experience that you have. It doesn't download any of the content or like conversations or posts that you have done. It's just, your work experience. So I'm guessing it's kind of like a resume. And then you can also upload your resume to those as well.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. So next, let's go through case study. So let me pull that up. And I'm glad that you're here, because then do you want to, I guess, give a quick overview of your case study before we go through it?
Yeah, sure. Good. So I pivoted my career and I did a UX immersion course with Career Foundry. And I was able to do a specialization and I ended up doing voice design. And through that kind of specialization, I got really interested in voice design and conversational AI. But our project was to create an Alexa skill and helping people make a meal quickly.
That's so cool. And did you enjoy that course?
I loved my voice design, especially my mentor. So I think that's kind of where I learned, like, that's where I would really love to go into.
Yeah, that's so cool. I definitely love that Career Foundry offers mentorship as part of their courses. I find that that's like no other courses do that. So I feel like that's why would continue to recommend their courses, because that's obviously key in like getting some of that feedback that you even had highlighted in your case study.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the smallest thing that I noticed right away is your title of your website is still like the default text. This is like obviously not a reflection of the project in general, but that was just something that I was like, oh, make sure that you change this to the name of your project. But yeah, generally, like this is such a visually appealing case study. And I think that you did such a great job of summarizing and like breaking things up in the different visuals that you've created. I think that you could do so like even more, to be honest. I think especially having your sample dialogue, and then I noticed you had linked to the like the flow map and then your script as well. I think even just like including screenshots of that would be a good way to break up this text so that people will like make it all the way through, but also to really highlight that as a part of the work that you did for this skill. And I think that that will kind of just go a long way, even if you have it like as your sample dialogue, like right at the top or like closer to the top, if you're trying to highlight it being that it's, voice design versus, general like user information. Cause I think you have a lot of this kind of like research and like all of your findings and then like the user interviews. And so like by the time I'm sort of getting to this, I almost like did, especially this visual right here, I was kind of like, what is this about? Like what is this these tasks, like what is that kind of referencing? So I think just kind of like rearranging it a little bit, and that might not be possible within this template that you're using. I'm not really sure. But yeah, generally I think the flow of it, and I think the fact that you actually do have sort of these like usability tests and you do have some numbers is something that is obviously very valuable to have. And so even pulling out some of those stats or pulling out kind of like your respondent information, like this is just a lot more visually appealing than the like walls of text are, I think.
Definitely. I think I did the classic thing of choosing a program like Framer where I kind of had to learn how to do it. So I was using,
Mm-hmm.
so it's a bit that I'm just struggling a little bit with that, but I do agree with like definitely at least swapping out maybe the first visual with something where it shows more voice design and kind of doing a better job a little bit with like you said, kind of highlighting that it's not a graphic and it's related to voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that too, you'll see this with both of the case studies that are on Sunny's portfolio, our voice skills as well. So you can kind of just see another option of what you could do. But I know too, especially that you're like earlier on into like learning these tools, that even adding another tool, like if you made this project, like if you remade this project in VoiceFlow and you either had screenshots of that or you had videos that you created that show the flows or that like his are like he's talking to the computer, that can also serve as kind of another key visual that will make it more apparent of like what your role in the project was and like what the work is, like the physical forms of work that went into creating this project.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And also I realized like after kind of that maybe the suggestions from my course were kind of maybe old school. And then I saw some like YouTube videos of prominent voice designers, and they were kind of saying things to gear away from like certain types of ways of giving instructions to make it more conversational. And so that's something I could also probably, if I redesign, like you say, in voice flow, that I could kind of rearrange this sample dialogues a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that could also be something that you even make as like another phase of this project, like something that you document that experience of saying like here's your conclusion, here's your conclusion that you felt that it was more old school or that you learned that there are new ways that you could be creating a project like this, or here's things that you would do next time, and then kind of like go and do them. I'm sure that at this point you have even more ideas of how you could sort of recreate this project. And once you go into something like that, it will be a lot easier to create than you might think. Also, sorry, everyone, my dog is growling in the background. I'm not sure if you can hear him. But yeah, I think, and I'm sure that you have just a lot of things that you could work on in it, and I think that that will be a really good tool, even if you only do like one flow of it, so that you have that experience and you have that asset that you can create.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Hillary.
You're welcome. Are you going to be making more case studies for your site?
I've just signed up for like a conversational AI content, and It's supposed to have some, I think we work on like 10 projects or like mini projects. So hopefully I can add in some things from that course onto my site as well, because I know my site's a little bit of a mixture of user researcher and voice design interested. And I think basically it's such a competitive market at the moment. I don't want to limit myself too much. I like user research and I like voice design. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, your website, I really like this. Is like a like Squarespace type of service, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it looks very fresh. And I really like how you have these sort of like works. And I think even too thinking about ways that you can expand talking about your the education that you're doing, you know, and talking about the different projects that you're doing are all things you'll be able to add to this. So yeah, and you're also doing the daily conversation design challenge along with
Yes.
me. So that's something that I'm planning to actually use that in my portfolio too, even just showing as writing samples, you know, creating some sort of image gallery of all of your submissions with like your either like self feedback or some of the feedback that you've received. There have been quite a few people who either summarized their challenges in like a blog post or in their portfolio. And it really is a good way to just show a lot of samples, maybe not all 14, but still, I think the ones that you sort of like the most, or just to get ideas of how you can go and further create another experience with those challenges.
Yeah, definitely.
And there also, you probably would be interested in the VUI challenge. It's another similar type of challenge that is only focused on voice. So that could be something that you could do after this one.
Yeah, I signed up for that one too.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah, that one's like a
I'll do
lot
one at a
more in
time.
depth. Yeah,
Yeah.
one at a time is probably good. And that would be a very good way to experiment with using voice flow too, I think, is through that challenge.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay. Oh, so I do actually, I want to talk about our questions. So let me just pull back up this. Here we go. Because the questions were about case studies as well. So we did speak about sort of like the number of case studies and like the content and the quality in our initial portfolio session that we hosted a couple of months ago. So I would definitely return to that if you were not in attendance or if you didn't get to watch the replay. But generally, we had kind of said it would be great if you could have 2 to 3. However, if you have one that is very strong, it's better than having kind of, you know, 3 or 4 that are not as strong, that don't have these visuals or that aren't fully, I guess, like sketched out in terms of all of the work that is done. So I would say that like quality over quantity for sure. But I think if you can have it as a goal for yourself to have 2 strong ones, I think that that would be great. And I think that that really kind of varies too based on what type of person you are. So if you are just getting into the industry, obviously expecting that you would have like 5 to 6 professional case studies of like real projects that you have shipped is not realistic at all. Versus if you are someone like me, like maybe you do have quite a few that you've created in the past, but even mine, it's sort of like, how do I strike the balance between work that I would replicate now and things that I've done much further in the past that maybe aren't as relevant. So I'm kind of trying to think of how, even in Lara's case, like if I've received or if I've done things that are a bit more outdated in terms of the practice. Like, for example, if you've created a bunch of rule-based chatbots and you wouldn't do that now, even talking about that, but also just thinking, that might just not be relevant to my portfolio. And I may need to either create something new and create a new project or be able to reflect on that in a way that is going to make it known that I've advanced in my skills and my beliefs, I guess, as a conversation designer, and that having that sort of like conclusion or end summary saying, like, if I were to start this project over in 2024, how would I have approached it, kind of thing, for a project that I did in maybe like 2019. So obviously the way that we are doing things now is like very different, even in terms of the tools that we use. So it's definitely like having that self-reflection is important. But I also think even for more senior level designers, thinking about how you could create new projects that maybe are just for yourself, so that you're able to have that sort of newer work that is going to use things like LLMs, is going to use new tools that you might not use in your day-to-day, like VoiceFlow or ManyChat or whatever it is. So I would definitely keep that in mind in terms of like creating case studies, especially if you don't have like the real work experience that you're capturing for that. And then to also answer your question about if it should be a mixture of voice chat and like the more advanced chatbots, that's kind of like up to you and where you want to go in your job. So I definitely think that we're moving more in a way where like conversation designers seem to be less specialized in terms of platforms than they were in the past. Like, for example, I have never created a voice bot like professionally. I have created like a few things that are just kind of that like work example and like thinking through the challenges or like how I might want to be doing something like that. But professionally, I have not created any voice experiences. And I do think there are people who have never created any chat experiences and they are more in voice only. And I feel like we're kind of going to a place now where people are a lot more like fluid in terms of what they're able to design for, just because of the nature of like where our world is. So there's a lot more conversational experiences across multiple devices. You know, there's wearables, there's like cars, there's virtual assistants, there's SMS assistants, like there's so many different options that now being able to adapt to like all of those different things is very helpful. But certainly people still have like their passions. So I find that like if I went to someone's portfolio and I didn't see chat and voice, I'm not going to necessarily assume that they only do one or the other. And I do think that most people probably have a preference of what they want to do. So it wouldn't be something where like you have to have it be a mixture. But if you are trying to break into the industry without experience, I would definitely become familiar with designing for both, not necessarily to like a case study level, but just being willing to and open to do multiple things. Like I think that that is very helpful in your career in general. But I think that it's not necessary for like what case studies you create. And then lastly, is it bad to use ChatGPT to write your case studies? So this is like sort of for case studies and like everything in general, I would not recommend fully having it authored by ChatGPT because it is very obvious to see that that's what was done, kind of. And so I think that for one, it's like, I would consider it to be like a form of plagiarism for sure, because you are not like creating these ideas, you're just like copying and pasting them from something. But I do think that it is very helpful to use it to brainstorm, to use it to help formulate your thoughts, or to even say, what are the parts of a case study, and then kind of go through your work and allow it to like interview you almost, so that you're providing those details. And then you're going into the results that you get and the text that you get and editing it to be within your voice, to, you know, talk the way that you talk, to make sure that everything is accurate, and to kind of use it as like an outlining tool versus like verbatim, write me a case study about this and make me sound this way, and then like copying and pasting it. Not to say that that's what you were meaning or that's what you're going to do, but I even think in terms of like cover letters and like job applications, I would say the same thing. I wouldn't recommend that you like fully are having ChatGPT generate these assets for you, because a lot of other people are doing that. And so then like the fear would be that yours is going to appear the exact same as theirs. And also it's going to kind of like be more general, because it's not going to have your personality like stamp on it. It's going to just be what, these prompts are returning with.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I have a portfolio with case studies, both professional and I guess non-professional, like personal projects.
Personal. Yeah.
Um, so I ended up using ChatGPT to shorten some of my paragraphs, and I ended up copying and pasting, but I didn't realize that was so. Thank you for that note. I will have to go back and change everything.
I mean, I don't know if like legally I would say that it is plagiarism. It's just that like and especially if you're saying you're providing it with like 3 paragraphs and you're saying, can you shorten this into 1 paragraph? Like it's definitely a gray area, I think. So I don't know that you have to like change everything, but I would definitely be aware that you should make sure that it still is fitting within like the way that you write, so that you are still like the flow of the entire case study makes sense. But I think, yeah, as far as like summarizing things, generating ideas, and then taking that as like a brainstorming piece of information, and then sort of refining the results that you're getting on your own, like without using it.
Yeah, because of the way I shortened it, some of the language that comes from ChatGPT, like some of the words that are used, it doesn't really reflect my language, so I will have to go back and change a lot of stuff. And that's kind of that gray area I couldn't figure out. So glad to have that feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure too, especially being in like a writing related field, it's even more important for us to have that eye of saying it isn't fitting within what you're writing. And maybe it's like you're learning terms that you want to adopt into your writing. But I think generally, we like as people, when you're reading like AI generated content on websites, it all kind of has that same sound to it. And so I feel like from an outsider's perspective, especially like recruiters who are viewing hundreds of portfolios, it's even more obvious to them when things are sounding very, very similar. And they want to make sure that you are putting that in, like, and it's even if someone is submitting a cover letter and it's like very templated, it's very like to whom it may concern type of, I have these general qualities. I would say in general, it's just better to have that layer of personalization, because it gives people that picture of what it would be like to work with you. So once you have edited it, I would love if you share your portfolio with us, and then people can look at it, especially even to get inspiration too, or continue to give you feedback on those projects that you have created. Okay, so if anyone has more questions, feel free to continue to drop them in the stock, and then we are going to go into Sunny's portfolio. Okay. Okay, so now you are seeing it. Let me make it a little bit smaller, just to kind of see. He's not here, so he will not be able to speak to his portfolio, and we will just or answer questions for us. But to be honest, that might be for the best, because this is kind of showing how much can you really understand about a person by only looking at their portfolio and them not explaining it to you or like giving you that context. And that was sort of, I guess, my general feedback for him is that I don't necessarily know like who he is. Like I know who he is. I know that he, is voiced. Oh, here he is. He actually just have arrived, Sunny. I was just about to review your portfolio and say that you were not here to explain it to us, but then you
Amazing.
are here now.
Sorry, I had something to do.
That's okay. Honestly, it was very perfect timing. I was like mid-sentence about to say what my impressions of your portfolio were. So now you can offer that explanations. But yeah, as I was saying, like viewing this, I have an understanding of your skills and sort of like what your jobs are that you have. But and I do have like somewhat of a sense of your personality through like your likes and dislikes. But generally, I was kind of like, I don't know a lot about you in terms of like how you arrived here. So, saying that you are both like a teacher and an actor and also a voice designer, I'm kind of like, curious in a way of saying like, okay, but how is this happening? Like, is there like a bio or like an about page? Like, I think that might be the next page you could consider adding to this, is just like, here's me, here's like my short summary of like who I am and why I am here. That's something that I was finding myself wondering by just like looking at the homepage, I guess. And so, and the other reason like that made me think of this as well is because you have this summary that's on your resume. And so I think even just like pulling this out and putting it like on the physical website would go a long way for that, because I think it's just like that
Clarity.
that humanization. Yeah.
Yeah, like who am I? Like a quick little snippet. Let's just get to it, right?
Yeah, especially because, you have significant experience. And so I think it would be interesting for people to know, like how you have arrived here. And then additionally, what type of work that you're looking for, because that was another thing that was like not entirely clear of like what types of projects you are looking for.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. And here I have like a lot of tabs that you have here. So yeah, and then you have like your resume is awesome, like just being one page. You have like a very impressive amount of skills and platforms that you have. So yeah, like I said here, I feel like, and especially like the other reason why I think it would be very helpful for you to have that sort of like executive summary or like some sort of like expansion on specifically your conversation design experience, because you have like based on your resume, you have said you just became a conversation designer in January of 2024. But the amount of experience and skills that you have like kind of surpass that time frame, I would say. So I think it's going to help you more to be like, I'm doing this and highlighting it, especially saying like you conducted interviews and you worked on these amount of products and you've created all of these demos and things like that. So those are all things that are like more of like something that should be underlined, I guess, as far as like your having just another pane that's kind of like about me and my experience on this homepage, I think would be helpful.
I see. So you're kind of saying like clarify my background and then clarify like the experience or what I bring or my kind of my experience in the CXD world so far.
Yeah, like so far, how you sort of have like arrived here, and then knowing that you have sort of like a unique background and how that background has like positioned you to succeed in this. And even just talking about like how you have quickly like started doing all this work, I guess. Because it is,
Absolutely.
yeah, because I don't want people to look at this and be like, oh, you have less than 1 year of experience. Because as you know, like all of the things that you've been doing until now, like are kind of building up to that. And you are really like hitting the ground running in terms of working on projects and creating projects, both like personally and professionally.
Sure. Yeah, okay. I think for me, quick question. Well, a little bit of context. I just got home So, and I just turned this on, so like,
And now I'm really about
I love constructive criticism. I just got home and I'm just getting this. It's awesome. So I'm trying to understand, like, not trying to understand, but I'm transitioning into this call right now. So yeah, it says freelance for my conversation designer experience, and it just started in January 24. Right. The freelance stuff, it's all spec work. So is there a way to say that I can do all this professionally, and I bring all this professional experience into whatever role I'm applying for, at the same time, without saying that, like, hey, this is just speculative work that was not shipped.
Yeah, I mean, I think you still worked on the things like for clients. I guess like whether or not they're
For sure.
shipped is still, you still are completing your deliverables for those projects.
Like the research is real, interviews are real, etc.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that what we were speaking about a little bit earlier is kind of like having those conclusions of your projects and saying, like, if this were to go further, here's what I would have done differently, or here's what I would like to see in future iterations of this. And so kind of just like expanding on and making the project a little bit larger than it started out to be, I think is helpful for that scenario.
Totally. But that'll go in the case studies, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. And so I think that even for this like fictional, I guess, like new about section that we're talking about, just kind of going into saying, you have worked with these types of clients, or like you have worked in these types of like work environments as a freelancer, I think would be helpful.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then let's talk about your case studies a little bit. Okay, so I do have to say this skill is something that I personally would love to have, and I was very excited to read about this.
Which
were
skill?
this babysitting smart TV.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is great. We were speaking a little bit earlier during Laura's case study about having sort of demo videos from VoiceFlow. So this is what I was referencing there. I don't know if I watched this, if you will be able to hear it on my audio.
Sorry, I don't know what happened. Like my thing just cut off and I had to come back.
Benji, can I help
you? But yeah, so this video is kind of just like going through your experience, and I really like that it's just like you saying the command, so it's like actually a real demo. I think that is really good, especially at the beginning, to give that context, and for me it kind of like just gave me this visual in the back of my mind as I'm reading through all these various assets of like what this is for. I also really liked how it was like a person really wanting to watch something that they couldn't watch. So it was sort of just going through not necessarily just the happy path, but like how you're repairing that and how you're continuing to engage them in conversation to lead them to an eventual resolution too. Yeah, so in general, I thought the way that you kind of like broke up these case studies was great. It was nice to see so many visuals in this. It definitely, like, I understand that it needs to be long, but it is, I feel like, does feel like quite long. And there's certain parts like this, like I really like how you did your sample script on both of your case studies. I feel like this could be further towards the top, even like it could be like at the top, kind of next to the demo or something like that, just to make sure, like, if you're thinking of going through your case studies, and this goes for anyone, think of like, what are the top things that are important for a person to see, and make sure that those are in a place that the person is going to actually like see them if they're skimming through and like before they close the tab, kind of thing. Because I think like in this world where like recruiters are seeing and looking at so many websites, we want to make sure that it's kind of like top of mind that this is the work that I have produced. In addition to, obviously, you have the demo so they can see that like finalized version. But I would say like your script and then like the flow part of it are like the other assets that are kind of the highlights in terms of like the work that is produced. And obviously, yeah, having the like interviews and having like all the research that you've done. And it could even be like if you allow these certain sections to be like condensed, like in a drop down kind of thing. So like a person can see all of the sections, and if they want to dive deeper into, you know, user feedback or something like that, they can go into that. But you want to make sure that they really are seeing the important stuff. Not that it's not all important, but I think you know what I mean. Yeah. Totally. So I think that definitely could be helpful. And then in terms of your key learnings as well, like this would be that section where you would kind of say, if I were to continue this project from here, this is what I would do. Or, I mean, you can say that, or you can actually like go and do it kind of thing. Because if it is like a spec that you've created, you can build it out more. Or just talking about like, here's what the limitations were and like things that are outside of your control. Because obviously, we can't all go into a scenario with a company or a brand and have it be the way that we would want it to be. You know, like they might be saying, we want it to go this way. And you're like, I really don't agree with that, but like, it's what you want. So that's what we'll do kind of thing. So I think just speaking to like, here's the direction that I would have maybe taken that, whether that's just like a short summary or it's something that you've continued to build. I think that would be another really helpful thing to have. And I think that your key learnings section too, it is very powerful in terms of like the types of like feedback that you're giving yourself. So I think making it highlighted in more of like, you have all these like bold sections. Those could be like the headers on the section, or they could be like part of an image if you wanted to make like an image that has text on it with like these as columns or whatever. I think that would be a way to make sure that people are like able to digest this amount of text in like a very quick and easy way.
Yes.
Yeah, because we all know that like people aren't reading it, but it's important work, you know, and like you want them to read it in whatever types of like tricks that you have to do to get them
no,
you know, to look at
you're
it.
absolutely right. This is good advice from like, you know, a good like if we were on a one-on-one call, this would be like me picking the brain of like a content designer over here, you know, because like when you said the visual part, it totally makes sense. I know it's like paragraphs of text, and like before I didn't even have the little bolded parts of it. And when I did that, I felt like it would help. Maybe it does help a bit, but like I think you're still right. And when people see these giant blocks of text, they're just going to be turned off by it. So everything you're saying is very helpful.
Yeah, well, it does help because that is the part that I read. So it definitely does help. And it's not, so I read it obviously, because I also was thinking, I read where you said you got feedback from a veteran conversation designer. And I was like, that actually would be another thing where if you had like a key quote or something like that you could include, I feel like that would actually be a nice, like large bolded kind of like quote to get, not, you don't have to name the person, but even just saying like, this was like a piece of feedback that I got, I think would be helpful. But yeah, generally, I feel like you have all these like important ideas and all of this content is like a very good reflection. So it is, yeah, one of those things that you kind of want to just digest more. Similar to, you know, all of it. And even like, I know because I do this like on my own work too, and I see it on most people's portfolios, is like having the entire flow chart is like most people are not going to read the entire thing. But if there is like one area that you want to like have right next to it, kind of like enlarge so that they are seeing that part of it, and then you know, have the full thing next to it, or like that they can click to open the full thing. I think any places that we can kind of like make this content more condensed is going to be very helpful in terms of like the results that you get from it.
That's very helpful.
Thanks.
It's like you just made me think of like Costco or something, where it's like here you can buy in bulk and have all your meat, and then like here's a little free sample.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good comparison. Is think of
Elevator
like
pitch.
what are all of the samples that we can make throughout our portfolios that can help with that. And then before you were on this call, we were also talking about like things to use Chat GPT for to help with your portfolio. And I actually had like copied a link to one of my own case studies and asked like for areas to improve. And I was surprised by the results, that I did find them helpful. So it's something that I would recommend people doing, even like for certain areas that you want feedback on, or if you want to know like how this is being portrayed. So a lot of like, and I talked about LinkedIn as well, like a lot of the ways that we're summarizing our work or ourselves aren't necessarily accurate to the way that we want it to be coming off, or we just need like new ideas of how could I summarize, or how could I represent this type of content in a way that I may have not thought of. And that's like a way that you can kind of use those types of tools to improve your portfolio or your website. Or even like something you could do is like copy your homepage or send the link to your homepage and say like, how would you write a 2-sentence like about me bio for this person? And then see what it comes back with.
Yeah, it's just generating ideas. No, that's cool, really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you to all three people who have submitted things for feedback. I would love, like, we have a little bit more time. So if anyone has any other questions or wants to share any feedback, I did like all of the talking. So if anyone else has any pieces of feedback for any of these three people, would love to hear them in our last few minutes here. Anyone?
Well, I just kind of want to say thank you, Hillary. Thank you, everyone here, especially for my tardiness.
I'm glad you joined. It really was like the best comedic timing, I think, of this
This
whole thing.
wasn't planned, guys. It wasn't planned. Um, and then, no, yeah, I really thank you and everyone else here, and for the feedback too. And these are things that other people have not mentioned. I haven't thought about myself, not in quite so detail. And so I appreciate that, as well as like, yeah, I think I was on the last summer session call too, and like, or no, second last, and then I think when you guys mentioned having like Elaine had like a hype page, and I'm planning like a testimonials page just for like people giving me recommendations or little blurbs about me. Do you think because I'm still trying to enter and pivot into the industry, um, I have one former I have coworkers, previous coworkers who I worked with in different professions, different industries. Do you think those are just as worthy to put like, on my website or my LinkedIn?
I do. I think that it is relevant in the way that, like, if you think about these people talking more about like your character and your professional attributes as far as like what it's like to work with you in any sense, like it still is relevant to whatever new jobs you're going to apply for. Obviously, if they're saying like you did like Kayla was the one who she had like quite a few different recommendations on her LinkedIn profile. And if someone was saying like Kayla's such a wonderful voiceover actor, like her voice sounds this way, like it wouldn't be as relevant. But if they're just saying, and what a lot of people said is like how versatile she is and how creative she is, and like things that are still going to apply to any jobs.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you apply for like an apartment or something like that, they always will say like, can you send like one personal and one professional reference, or like personal reference? And so think about it, like those people are even like more important to who you are as a person, and they kind of know you, especially these people who you probably have worked with for like multiple years. They can speak to you a lot more accurately, and they can even pull in and say like, I worked with Sunny for X amount of time and like always was, like I don't want to necessarily say like
Sure,
feed them that type of information, but even giving them the background of saying like, I would love if you could write me something about like what I'm like to work with as a
Oh, it's fun.
person
It's
versus
speaking
like,
about the character, like you said, the character, your
yeah.
skills, just what it's like to be in a room with you in a professional environment, right?
Yeah, and I definitely think those are relevant, and I do think that having that on your website would be very helpful for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry I missed everybody else's.
Any other questions? Well, I'll be sending out the replay so you can rewatch the other two as well. Yeah. Anyone? This is the first time that we've not gone over all summer long, or probably in all of the history of all of the events that I ever have hosted. Probably because we have a much smaller group. But yeah, I guess if no one else has questions or feedback, I would just love to say thank you to all of you who have attended these over the past couple of months. It has been great to just kind of like get back into things and chat with people about these like very, very specific areas. I always find it interesting to see like what people have questions about and see how many people who have the same question. So I hope that you'll continue to kind of like send those along to me as time goes on, and then I can end up hosting more as well as we're going into the rest of the year. Yeah, thanks everyone. And like I said, look out for the recording in your email, and then I'll also send the recording of the other two sessions that we hosted as well in case you missed those.
All right.
All
Take care, all.
right, bye everyone.